All right, dear friends of sauna, this is Lassi and I'm the host for this webinar called What is Finnish Sauna? In this webinar recording, you will learn who am I, what is the company Saunologia that's producing this webinar. Then we will dive into the main topic, which is talking about what is a Finnish sauna and why it is good for you. Then, after learning about that, we will dive into the world of how you design and construct saunas so that they work. What are the kind of fundamental things that you need to kind of observe? Once we've done with that, we have a look at a few potential things that might go wrong in the sauna design construction thing, and that's all. That'll be a short summary, and then you can go on your merry way. So, for a few words about myself. First of all, this recording is made here in Helsinki, in Finland, the land of saunas, where we don't actually know even how many saunas there are, but at least a couple of million. My personal relationship with sauna got into a different level more than 10 years ago when I first designed and built my very first own sauna in this photo here. I also got started with something else in a project that got me writing in several books. I started a project called Saunologia.fi, which has been an online publication platform for sauna-related information. I personally authored more than 90% of all the articles, but there are also guest posts over the years. Since I began this project, I quickly realized that I want to make a little bit something more concrete out of it. And my first book in Finnish came out in 2019, followed by an English edition of what is called Secrets of Finnish Sauna Design. And last year also a book called Finnish Sauna, which I call the construction book. These have been also translated, so they are becoming more available globally. My global presence is also facilitated by another internet service called finishsaunadesign.fi, which provides sauna design and consulting services globally. And what we do at Saunologia, we basically are on a single mission, trying to help people wherever they are to produce and enjoy better sauna experiences. Something healthy, sustainable, something that's very close to the Finnish roots. And how we do this, we provide as a company unique premium sauna designs wherever you are, developing sauna concepts and architectural sauna designs. We also provide design review and improvement services so that if you have an existing design or existing sauna, but that requires some help, we are there to provide and support these types of functions as well. There are a few special things that we also offer. For instance, you can get computational fluid simulations through Saunologia and also trainings in different parts of the sauna field. We have global customers. For instance, here's a nice private residence sauna from Utah, completed last year. And the owner writes that the sauna was fantastic and everything was better than I could have hoped for. We also have customers on the different coast in California, Northern California, Arcata. And of course, here in Finland, this is a public sauna location, which at Perensaari in Pirkkala, Finland, close to the Tampere region, I did the design for the sauna interior several years ago. Now, let's dive into the topic of what is a Finnish sauna. The Finnish sauna is quite an interesting and multifaceted concept if you gotta look at all the ways it's being understood. In my writing and in my talkings, I'm usually talking, when I say sauna, I might refer to two different things. First of all, I might talk about buildings, which can have inside different types of spaces, but including a sauna room. This sauna hot room is actually the kind of heart and soul of everything that goes around. So even though we might talk about sauna buildings that have like several connected facilities such as dressing room, terrace, showers, lounges, cleaning closets, so forth, it always comes back to what is going on inside this hot room. And there are definitions of sauna. And how I see them is that sauna is a hot room with walls preferably made of wood, heated by a sauna heater, equipped with sufficient amount of sauna stones so that we can produce steam, also known as löyly in the Finnish language. And the sauna is heated quite a lot. The temperature measured at maximum 1 meter above the highest bench is usually between 60 and 105 Celsius or 140 and 20 to 20 Fahrenheit. This is my sauna definition. It's very close to the ISA and EN 16184 definitions with few variations. But I think the more clearest visible elements are the heater, sauna stones, the high temperature, close to the ceiling, high benches, so that we can get people where the temperature is the highest, and also the possibility to create load, not visualized in this particular sauna. Okay, then a few words about Löyly. So the availability of Löyly and steam is an integral part of the Finnish sauna experience, which means that the humidity inside this Finnish sauna is never quite stable. It kind of goes up and down depending on how much there's a presence of Löyly. And that also kind of makes few differences, because besides kind of convective heat and radiative heat that we get inside sauna, the load also influences the humidity, and which ends up in transferring more heat on our body, including additional heat from condensation. So what actually looks like sweat in sauna conditions might actually be condensation of the load water. And so there's a kind of heat transfer from the sauna stones to your skin. So, next small comparison: what is sauna and what is not sauna. This is drawn from my book last year, in which I made the table to compare how the Finnish sauna stands in comparison to the Russian bath called banya. They are very too much alike, in my opinion. The banyas tend to be maybe a little bit more moist than the Finnish sauna, but that might be kind of depending on conditions. So we can say that there's very, very little difference between these two, but then we have some totally different technologies, such as infrared cabins, which have much more moderate temperature. They are always dry. They have a lot of radiant heat, but no condensation, and there's nothing much you can do in the infrared cabin. And definitely, that's not a sauna. Then next product here is steam room. So steam room has still lower temperature, but it has extremely high, basically fully saturated humidity level, not noticeable radiant heat, a lot of condensation, and of course, all opportunities to do different types of rituals, but it's also not a sauna. Then on the final column, we've got the Turkish baths or hammam, which is a totally distinctive, say, architectural and technical solution of its own, more akin to the kind of very old Roman technology, and having very little in common with any of the other technologies. So, here's sauna, and the rest is not a sauna. Let's have a look at how these other spaces look like. So here's an infrared cabin for you. Definitely not a sauna. We don't have very high benches. We don't have a visible heater. We have visible infrared radiators here of a type that actually glows red, but that's actually not requirement. They could also look different. Here's a steam room. Steam rooms is usually recognized by the fact that they have tiled walls and ceilings, and also floors. That's kind of mandatory in order to keep the high level of humidity inside the box. And of course, no visible heater. The steam is being generated usually in spaces adjacent, but not inside the room. And here's an image from hammam. Hammam is really a place for relaxation and washing, thorough scrubbing, and has very different type of architecture than saunas or any of the other cabins. So coming back, when we think about the Finnish sauna, we should see at least five things: the heater with sauna stones. We have a high temperature. We might see it if there's a thermometer. We have relatively high benches that at least raise above the level of the heater, and the possibility to create löyly, here a pail and ladle. Then a few words about the Finnish sauna culture. So this is kind of a much more difficult topic to kind of pin it down in words. But I say that, first of all, in Finland, the sauna is a whole family affair. So everyone goes to saunas, say like from 6 months or older youngsters. And there's also kind of a degree of what I'd call low democracy, which basically means that everyone who is inside the sauna basically has the right to create their own steam or löyly. And although in social settings and public saunas, this might get somewhat complicated, so there should be some kind of negotiation whether presence of löyly is desirable at any moment. But there is still kind of a idea that there's no single person or single kind of qualification required to administer löyly. And then we've got a lot of different types of sauna use. We've got like social parties. Here, one of the photos, the upper photo, some of you might recognize some quite well-known Finnish former hockey players who have decided to take the NHL trophy into the sauna. This is kind of very well-known ritual uh, for celebrating big victories. But of course, then there's a lot of also much private sauna bathing in which people are usually naked and sometimes also alone. This is also due to the fact that we've got a lot of private saunas here in Finland. So it's not unusual that there are people who are living on their own or with a partner, and then they might be the sole person who actually uses the private sauna on a frequent basis. So this is very, very small sliver and slice of the Finnish sauna culture, but I think it's important to understand how the saunas also get used. Then, why is sauna good for you? The health benefits of sauna use have come up in the past over 10 years, mostly in the studies by Professor Jari Laukkanen from the University of Jyväskylä. And in his studies, his research group has made several findings regarding, for instance, the cardiovascular health benefits, reducing risk of death, lowering systolic blood pressure, brain health, reducing risk of Alzheimer's and dementia, improving mental health, reducing the risk of psychosis. Then a few other people have discovered that sauna seems to improve subjective sleep. It seems to alleviate the problems of chronic pain, such as in arthritis or fibromyalgia. So, altogether, the findings are nothing short of extraordinary. Because if we look at the effect sizes in these studies, we can find that they're amazingly large. And relatively speaking, only like giving up smoking would seem to predict more favorable long term outcomes than using the sauna. So you might be curious on how this is actually going to work. What matters is the frequency and duration of sauna use. So across these multiple studies, it has been found that using the sauna at least 4 times a week and at least for 20 minutes at a time seems to be producing most consistent health benefits. Now, the interesting thing here is that we know this, how much you should do sauna. What doesn't seem to be much affecting the results is the temperature, for instance. So we have to understand that all of these people have been inside Finnish style sauna when they've been followed up by the health developments. And their saunas on the average have been at 76 degrees Celsius, 169 Fahrenheit, so not that hot. And there's quite a lot of variation between the temperatures. But the actually interesting question is why is sauna so healthy? And this is quite interesting because we don't really know the exact mechanisms and cause. They remain unknown. There are multiple hypotheses. There are definitely more than 10 factors, some not even listed. This is an image from Jari Laukkanen and Setor Kunutzor's study or review paper 2 years ago. And there are quite a lot of different ways why it might work. It might be because of reduced inflammation, more reduced oxidative stress, or the activation of heat shock proteins, or something else. Anyways, altogether, all these factors that we know or we don't even know it, but yet seem to kind of extend the health span and reduce different age-related diseases. So, that's a big question, but it seems that it works. But it's important when we think about the potential ways we could get these health benefits is that there are some unique features in the Finnish sauna. For instance, a recent study compared the use of far infrared, what they called sauna, I would call far infrared cabin, in which young adults were in 45 minutes in the infrared therapy, and there was no perceivable increase in their core body temperature, which I think is quite important because particularly there are people who are selling these different types of equipment for heat therapy, but it seems that there's no guarantees that all the same health benefits might be attained by using these other types of technologies, because there is scientific evidence for the health benefits from other types of heat therapies, but it's definitely not the similar kind of evidence that we have for the Finnish sauna. If you think about, for instance, raising the core body temperature, we can say that hot water immersion, like here on the right side, there's a Japanese onsen. It's effective, but we don't really know if that's all there is to it. So, one final note is that why you need a good sauna for health benefits. Because besides being able to access the sauna frequently, in this case, at least 4 times a week, you need some motivation and routines that you really use the sauna. So I think it has to be technically sound, so it's actually comfortable. You could spend 20 minutes there without adverse health effects. And I think, generally speaking, in my own work, when I think about design, I think it's important to focus on the immediate gratification and sauna fun instead of this kind of no pain, no gain attitude and thinking about sauna as an exercise. So I think definitely must be more fun getting into the sauna than getting out of the sauna. So I don't kind of agree with this Joe Rogan attitude of sauna use. Yes, and also, of course, during the Second World War, there were a lot of kind of temporary saunas made, and I don't think the soldiers were doing them for the kind of benefits of longevity. Now, let's turn a page and we go to the next big chapter in this webinar, which is about the essential design requirements for a Finnish sauna. Briefly kind of saying that my design approach for the Finnish sauna includes four factors: interior design, heat, air quality, and then culture and company. The fourth part, the culture and sauna company, are something that I don't really design for, or I design for them, but I don't really control them. So they're a little bit like out of the equation. We have to understand the sauna is made of multiple design choices. So first of all, the first choice is design capacity. So that's the first thing we have to think about. How many people are we going to get into the sauna? Then we think about the infrastructural things. For instance, how much power are we going to use in order to heat it up? Where are we going to get water? How we organize drainage? How we can control air quality and ventilation. Then we actually go to things that are more inside the sauna: interior design and construction details, economics, thermal efficiency, safety. All these things kind of have to be considered in the sauna design. First of all, about the capacity. So sauna size is based on the number of people that should fit in there. Here's a nice illustration on the right from the author Jarmo Hiltunen. In his illustration, we can see these 2 feet by 2 feet area cubicles that are sitting on the sauna benches. And if we count, we find that there's like 10 of them. That's kind of good approximation of how much space do we need in the sauna. Then, of course, besides people, we need usually a little bit of space for the steps, how we get to the benches, and of course, a little bit of space for the heater as well. In this case, there's actually quite a lot of space allocated by the heater because this is a smoke sauna, not a kind of regular indoor electric sauna. Then we can also draw that there's certain like minimum dimensions for the sauna, in which case I'd say it's like 6 feet times 5 feet, which I say is the minimum interior. Otherwise, it will be quite complicated to fit all these elements in. Next, the infrastructural needs. In order to heat up the sauna, we need a lot of power. We need approximately 1 kilowatt for every 35 cubic feet. And where do we get that? I think it doesn't matter so much what type of heater we are using, as long as we're confident that there's a very good fit between the heater and the room, so that we have the right type of heater in the right type of place. In Finland, people usually prefer wood-burning heaters when possible, and they are kind of convenient for medium, large saunas, not the smallest saunas and not the biggest saunas. When we're talking about huge variety, then we usually can look into electric or gas-burning heaters that scale up also to huge saunas, but might need multiple units. This is particularly important and necessary when we are in North America, where the different electrical system is such that we usually can't have very powerful individual heaters. Instead, in order to have electrical heaters, we need to use multiple heaters in single location. Then, important thing for our North American people is that Finnish saunas are not afraid of water. There's no risk in putting water on top of the kind of properly built and properly installed electrical heater. So these type of warnings about dry saunas are usually signs that there's something wrong with either the heater or its installation. So this is really not kind of a thing that you should run into in the Finnish sauna. But one thing about water is that it has to be managed. So public saunas particularly have to be cleaned and washed regularly. So the sauna should have a drain and also a cold water faucet somewhere close by, which facilitates both cleaning and provides an access to that water that's used to create steam. Then I would also say that ventilation must be present. Modern saunas, particularly indoors, should rely on fully mechanical ventilation. That's the kind of clearly superior solution. About interior design, maybe the kind of most prominent element in Finnish saunas is that they tend to have very high benches. And the idea is that the combination of the benches and the ceiling is such that it makes it possible to enjoy löyly and get the best of the heat. So, whenever inside a Finnish sauna, you should probably see at least two levels of benches and also at least one or more steps leading into those benches. So, altogether, we might have, like in this photo, at least four levels before we get to the top. We've got guidelines for bench heights, and a lot of these guidelines come from either ergonomy or the fact that the hot and humid air likes to kind of go to the highest place in the room. So that's why we're trying to get these benches also high up as possible so that we can guarantee that people will get a nice thermal experience when sitting in the sauna. There are also other guidelines from my books. You can find all the documentation or also available usually online. And the basic intention is that we're trying to kind of make the benches so that they kind of fit human physiology so that people don't have to adapt to the benches, but the other way around. Few points about the sauna construction, because for the most part, the sauna is just a wet room with a tall bench, as I've just described. But there are a few elements that you should find inside a sauna. For instance, there should be insulation because we want to keep the sauna warm. There should be a vapor barrier because we want to keep all the humidity inside the room and not let it leak out uncontrolled. Because we want to be able to use water in plenty. We want to have water block beneath the floor, and of course the drain so that we can control where the water goes if there's a lot of it on the floor. Insulation is that the higher temperature we have inside the room, the bigger the heat loss will be in comparison to the external spaces. So that is why we usually use in Finland at least 4-inch thick rock wool or equivalent insulation that is preferred, or then this kind of more modern polyiso boards, which have thickness about like 30 millimeters or about 1.5 inches. Each of these solutions will provide a similar R value and keep the heat inside the sauna. The vapor barrier is also kind of crucial technical part of the sauna. It can be done in a few different ways. For instance, the aluminum paper here on the left is also one of the kind of most common ones, and it has been used for decades. Then a few final words of warning: the worst mistakes in design construction. First of all, I think one of the bigger things that happens already on the design board is making the sauna wrong size, usually too big. It might be sometimes too small, but I think most of the time the sauna that are too small are because of the existing constraints, not that someone would have designed intentionally too small of a cabin. Then we might have a problem of having too powerful or too weak heater. Both have unique consequences, but once more, let's try to focus on getting the right size of heater from the beginning. And ventilation, we can also have both problems of having too little or too much ventilation. These will also have different types of outcomes. So too little ventilation will create a suffocating feeling in the long run and be unpleasant. Too much ventilation will be very energy inefficient and also be bad for your overall sauna experience. In the interior design side, we should kind of remember to use materials that are compatible with sauna, because that's one of the things here in the photo taken from Reddit. We can see that there's kind of leaking of sap, which might make your sauna interior quite uncomfortable in the long run, particularly when it's still hot, and you might get kind of in skin contact with the sap. It's not a very pleasant feeling. And although the kind of biggest problems that usually happen in interior design is not really matching the ceiling to the benches or not matching the benches with the heater, because it's usually also kind of recommended that your heater should be somehow aligned with the level of the benches. This is called law of löyly and was previously mentioned in one of the slides. That's not It's not the kind of worst mistake you can make, but I think the further off you get from this law of löyly and keeping the foot bench above the level of the heater, the bigger problems you will run into. And one of the kind of problems that we have a lot of here in Finland is that saunas might turn out impossible to keep clean, and that's something to also watch out for. To recap, we have quite a few elements that we're trying to kind of balance in this kind of design chess game of saunas. So we start from the design capacity, then we think about how we get it heated up, how we do ventilation, then we kind of think about the details of the interior design, and of course we have to be considered for the different cultural practices that we expect that will be happening inside the sauna. And I think for me in this kind of a game is that I usually try and do different kind of rounds to understand how these three elements, heating, ventilation, interior design, how they kind of come together once we make decisions here and there. And then we should finally kind of get a nice solution for each and every sauna. And I think the good Finnish sauna design creates saunas that look nice and work great. In my opinion, there are like at least three important measures of success. Number one is that whether people stay long in the sauna, whether they say they enjoy the sauna, and third, whether they actually want to come back again and again and again to the sauna. And this is, of course, also for the public saunas, important way to kind of make the sauna business work. That's it. If you have any further questions, please get in touch with me through saunologia.com, send an email at lassi@saunologia.fi, or you can find different channels or LinkedIn and connect me there. Thank you for watching, and subscribe to the Saunologia YouTube channel if you find this interesting. All right, see you.